You're gonna have to excuse the raspy voice. Turns out that the uncontrollable sobbing at the cathedral earlier was not as kind on my vocal cords as I would have liked. So I was gonna have to deal with that. I'd like to take this opportunity initially to thank the Leopolds and the Kaepniks for hosting such a memorable event in the celebration of two of my best friends. These two deserve the best, and I know how much hard work went on behind the scenes to make all of this come together in such a memorable way. So in that spirit, I'd like to buck tradition here for a moment, propose a toast within a toast. Here's to Susan, Tim, Linda, and Dave. You guys, for many more reasons than one, this great night would never have been possible without you. So here's to you and many years of peace and happiness for your collective families. Well, I'm certainly not the luckiest guy in the room tonight. I do feel very privileged to be able to share something with all of you that's been an incredibly meaningful part of the last 8 years of my life. And that's my friendship with Dan. Most relationships begin with a sort of initial diligence period, a time during which two people are feeling each other out, searching for elements of oneself in the other, and trying to gauge whether that other person has that rare cocktail of moxie, loyalty, sincerity, and nebulous coolness that ultimately portends a long-term bond.
Wow.
It was never that scientific or slowly moving with Dan and me. Our initial friendship was forged in the fire of the fraternity year, or the freshman year fraternity pledging experience. And even amidst that often chaotic backdrop, the preppy California kid with the cool hair and easy swagger immediately stood out. I'll never have trouble remembering my first real impression of Dan. 24 freshman boys stood in the room, green, young, and jittery, everybody congregating in pre-established cliques, some going through that initial requisite diligence process, and everybody waiting for that one person who would emerge to break the collective ice and bring our class together. It shouldn't surprise most people in this room to learn that Dan Kaepnik quickly established himself as that guy, our pledge class president, and ultimately as one of my best friends. I couldn't pinpoint at first what exactly was so infectious about this guy, but after spending most of that second semester of freshman year in virtual lockstep with Dan, I began to figure it out. Dan's always been ahead of the curve. The impeccable attention to wardrobe detail, sarcastic sense of humor, and boyish good looks come off the page right away, yes. But what I admired and admire the most about Dan are his unwavering sense of self and commitment to living a life of conviction under his own terms. In Dan, I found not only an incredible friend, but also that elusive peer role model who can push himself and his friends to be better and also indulge in our mutual thirst for living an experienced-soaked life. Over the years, that thirst has led us to some weird and wonderful places. To a midwinter swim in Lake Tahoe, through the most disastrous beach football catch in the history of man, and ultimately to that world-famous lovers incubator in beautiful Avalon, New Jersey, the Whitebriar. Yes. Probably the most common thread throughout our years of countless bro conversations was the search for the girl, capital T, capital G. And as with most other things in Dan's life, he always had a very personal and very idealized notion of who that girl would be for him. Now, I met Natalie about 3 years before Dan's fateful inaugural visit to the Briar, so I knew full well that my man very well might be walking into the most benign and welcome slaughter that a man can face. Now, people like to talk about love at first sight, and I'm not going to either support or refute that idea, but after Kieran and I introduced these two, at the very least it was love at first weekend. And also, I'm going to give a little side note here. Kieran and I will continue to take about 80% credit for this union, and I think we're going to need to allocate another 10% to the golf cart that Dan was driving around most of that weekend. Now, you two did a killer job on that last 10%. Natalie, I could say that you're the exact manifestation of the girl that Dan had always envisioned for himself, but that wouldn't really be true. You're that diabolical combination of cutie, witty, sassy, caring, and fun that guys don't allow themselves to dream about because reality is almost always a compromise. There is no compromise with you. And although I fear what this may do to Dan's ego by saying this, I'll say the same to you. You found the guy. that person who will love you always, be true to himself and to you, and be that person that you've always dared to dream about. So please join me in raising your glasses to Dan and Natalie. May you continue to dream just as big for the rest of your lives together, because tonight's living proof that even the biggest ones can continue to come true. Cheers to you guys.